And so as you're waiting for the live stream to start, oh, we are live. Oh, okay. Yes, we are live. Oh yeah, I can see that we are live. So guys, thanks for showing up. And this is Africa Debates. And so like we are, I guess I would like to call us a podcaster where we deal with African issues as Africans. And so there's a religious bent to it. And so like, and also we invite those who do not share any particular religion into the topic. So like we've had topics with regards to colonialism in the past with science, we've discussed atheism. And so like today we want to discuss the issue of like homosexuality, which has been a big issue in Africa. And so, or in Kenya in particular. And so like maybe there are other people who are not from Kenya who've joined us. So you're welcome. And so like in particular, we are dealing with, there's been a lot of this conversation on the LGBTQIA community, particularly in Kenya, because of them getting like opportunities to register. And so like everybody has been talking about it, regardless of what they believe or don't believe. And so like we, at least I felt like it was a good conversation to have. And obviously there's going to be disagreement, but we will see what the atheist and Christian position are on this. So like we have Bill Dindi, who will be representing the Christian position, and he will be telling us how Christians would think about this particular issue. And then Bill Dindi is part of Apologetics Kenya, which is an organization he and I are part of, and which seeks to like think about African issues in light of a Christian perspective. And now Harrison Mumia, who might be familiar with most of, maybe many of us here, is the president of the Atheists in Kenya Society, and he would like to bring a more naturalistic perspective on the homosexuality issue. And so like without further ado, because we have a lot to cover, we will start with Bill Dindi, and he will give us 15 minutes of his opening statement on what the Christian view is on the historical realities of the LGBTQIA community in Africa and the present day realities in Africa and particularly in Kenya, and then now what the way forward is. So Bill, I leave it to you. Take it away.
Right, thank you very much, Charles. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, to be part of this conversation with my friend Harrison, our cross severally. I appreciate that we can have this discussion. It's pertinent, and I think it's a timely one. It's important that we discuss it openly. Now, in Kenya, talking about the historical realities of this LGBTQ issue, and particularly in our context in Africa, particularly here in Kenya. So in Kenya, of course, we all know, I know there might be a few people from out there who are beyond Kenya, but in Kenya here, the issue in recent times has been catalyzed by the ruling from the Supreme Court, where Petition 16 of 2019 was finally expended with on 24th of February. The argument was that it was important to allow the gays and lesbians and people who identify as such to have a society to basically associate freely. And they cited Article 36, Article 33 of the Constitution on freedom of expression, freedom of association, the rights of equal protection of all people under the Constitution in Article 27. And the Supreme Court ruled, there was a majority ruling by the bench, 3-2. They essentially stated, this was probably the statement, it will be unconstitutional to limit the rights to the denial of registration of an association purely on the basis of sexual orientation of the participants, of the applicants. That has attracted lots of. I will not get into the details of that particular ruling, but I imagine as we proceed, that matter will certainly come up. But many felt that what the court essentially did was go beyond their jurisdiction, which was they essentially legislated from the bench rather than interpreted rather than interpret the law, they actually did legislate from the bench, because this matter has been extremely, the definition of marriage is clear in the very constitution, and in the penal code, I think 162, 63, 65, there's actually homosexuality is actually criminalized. So legalizing a criminality within the same body of law is actually introducing a contradiction of sorts. So that is the issue, and many of us have, of course, taken issue with that. We feel like this was very consistently handled. Yeah. Now, beyond that, the issue with LGBTQ and the whole question of sexuality is, and it's pertinent, like I said. Kevin DeYoung, a Christian, a theologian, says, at the heart of this debate, issues of fundamental questions about who a man is and how human flourishing ought to be expressed. Ultimately, this issue is not just about sexual practices. It's not just about what two adults do behind the closed doors of their home. This is certainly a question about our values. This is a subtle question about the fundamental nature of humanity. Who is a human being? What constitutes a human being? And what is natural and what is not for a human being. There are certain assumptions here that I'm sure our friend will try to argue from the naturalistic view. Just, a view that fails to fully appreciate, the constitution of the human person. But I will argue from biology, I will argue from genetics, I will argue from sociocultural perspectives, and all this, I hope, will prove to us that homosexuality and what is being pushed by our homosexual brothers and sisters is actually off, and it's important for us to appreciate it as such and have a sober conversation around that. That said, I think it's important to also appreciate that the Judeo-Christian worldview, which I espouse, is one that explicitly states and affirms that humans were created in the image and likeness of God. All humans, regardless of what they choose to identify as. Every single human has been created in the image and likeness of God, and as such has intrinsic worth. And their humanity and sense of the identity is defined by God. The fact that we are created by God means that we are creatures, first of all. The fact that we are created in the image of God means that we have values that are intrinsic to us, regardless of our proclivities to sin or whatever. All of us bear that and have value. It also implies that we are matter and spirit. Our constitution has both matter and spirit. So this is what we call helomorphism. And we are also relational beings because we reflect the triune nature of God who exists in a community. So it's important to appreciate that. And even with the scriptures that I'm going to cite, of course, from my perspective that speak against homosexuality and all, it's important for us to appreciate that when you go to those scriptures, actually, especially in the New Testament, every single one of them, either prior or after, the writer speaks out against these matters. He actually says, all of us are sinners. None of us can claim to be wholly righteous. That's why God had to intervene and sort out the problem of man's sin. But essentially, all of us are sinners, all of us are fallen. And so the sin of what you choose your sin, the kind of sin which you have greater proclivity need not necessarily divide us. Yeah, it needs to be one that we can point out and we are asserting. If it's a sin, we'll call it out. If it's wrong, it's not in keeping with God's design, we will call it. But after doing that, we can have a conversation around how then does God go about resolving these particular issues. And for matter, sexuality, and identity, I will argue that there actually is a way out. Allow me to get into a bit of the history, because this debate ideally is meant to focus on historical perspectives. Unfortunately, you cannot have a conversation around the history of this matter, sexuality, and identity without going way back, in fact, way beyond the African mindset and worldview. Because many of the influences that, especially with the modern day homosexual movement, like here in Kenya, there's lots of influence from the Western world. And so there's lots of the Western worldviews and perspectives that have permeated this conversation that really have very little to do with historical African traditional understanding and perspectives on this matter. So it's important for us to go way back and look at society in total. Generally, of course, what we have today as modern thought is informed a lot by the Greek and Hellenistic perspectives, the Romans and all that. So I'd want us to go a bit back and look at all these cultures in totality. History has traditionally been divided into three epochs. The first one is the pre-modern times. And in the pre-modern times, men predominantly believed that the definition of truth was what the gods, the deities, asserted truth to be. And I'm going to argue that this ultimately boils down to certain truth claims. And if you go back to the history of truth, pre-modern times, it's the deities, the gods, whatever your definition of these gods were, they're the ones who defined what truth was. But then we move to the modern times. And in the modern times, we basically had an upsurge in science and our understanding of the natural world. And unfortunately, for those who thought that God was merely a God of the gaps, the relevance of God was limited to things we could not explain. So
5 minutes left.
Thunderstorm, for example. Sorry?
5 minutes left.
Okay. So, for example, thunder would roar and people would think the gods are fighting, and all that. So when science explained that, then it did away with the necessity of the idea of God. Okay, so in the modern times, science got to be the primary definition of what truth is. Truth was what science says truth is. And then in the postmodern times, which are basically the times we're living in, the disillusionment with science hit an all-time high. I know my friend Harrison, I've heard him speak severally and quoted the likes of Nietzsche and others, fellas who, frankly, even from their predictions, they clearly asserted that with this doing away of the idea of God, we were going to have morality being relative. And if morality is relative, then anyone can do and live as they want, okay? And so in the postmodern times, truth then became what any man would wish that truth to be. Unfortunately, what we are seeing today with the LGBTQ movement is the extreme extrapolation of that idea, where now anyone can identify as anything, because you are the determinant of what truth is. So if I feel like I'm a man trapped in a woman's body and I am a man biologically, then I can identify as a woman. Transgenderism is basically that. There's actually examples of people who have identified as, there's a PhD, a professor from the University of Arizona who identifies as a female hippopotamus. I mean, a PhD holder, female hippopotamus. And he actually expects that you will not only affirm and assent to it, but their chosen pronouns will be used, when referencing them. And we have people like Professor Jordan Peterson and many others who have been cancelled on account of refusing to accede to some of these culturally absurd realities that are natural overflows of this postmodernistic thinking that subjectivizes the concept of truth. And therefore, I want to put it to us that from my perspective, and I want to assert it, the Judeo-Christian worldview offers the best solutions in terms of identity, defining who a person is, defining what constitutes a human being, And I also want to argue that many of the scriptures, verses that, I will hopefully list at some point, my time is almost up, will very clearly explain. They very clearly point out what God's position on matter sexuality is. There have been some in church circles who've gone off tangent, but the truth still remains the truth. You do not judge truth. You do not judge a road by the drunkards walking on it. They may stagger along the path, but there's an objective path. And I want to argue that there's a God who has defined this, he's put this together, and his perspective is what should carry the day. Thank you. Oh, I still have 2 minutes. All right. No, I think I'll yield my time to
okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, thanks for that, Bill, for giving us a Christian view on this particular issue. And I guess let me just start the stopwatch again. In fact, I think what I'll do, I will put the stopwatch, because there are no presentations being presented. I'll put the stopwatch there so that you can see it as you're presenting, so that you can plan yourself. So Harrison is now going to give us the naturalistic perspective on this particular matter. And Harrison, you can start whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, Bill, for that passionate presentation. And I just want to begin by saying that the Supreme Court of Kenya has made one of the most progressive judgments that we have seen in the history of Kenya. And by allowing the LGBTQ community to register as an NGO, they have adhered to our constitution, they have adhered to international law, they have adhered to the progress that we are seeing worldwide, where definitely the LGBTQ community is becoming better understood and widely accepted as part and parcel of our diversity. Let me just mention that the Supreme Court relied on Article 36 of the Kenyan Constitution, which is something that I think Bill doesn't seem to appreciate. Because Article 36 basically states that every person has the right to freedom of association. Every person, it does not matter whether you're gay, lesbian, Christian, atheists. By the way, for those who don't know, I'm also the president of the Atheists in Kenya Society, and we were also registered pursuant to Article 36. And so, despite the fact that our penal code criminalizes homosexuality, the Constitution actually is supreme. And the Supreme Court judges found that on the question of whether they are allowed to register as an NGO, Article 36 does not say certain people have the right to freedom of association. It says every person. And so the reading of the Constitution, if you do it properly, you really should come to the conclusion that the Supreme Court, the majority ruling of the Supreme Court judges was actually very sound. And I celebrate that as a person. Let me mention that human sexuality is a very complex issue. The notion that someone would be attracted to an individual of the same sex is actually very hard to understand for people like Dindi and the Christians who are against it, and the many Kenyans who are homophobic. They find it difficult to understand how people of the same sex can have an attraction. And you see, I understand where this is coming from. It's been informed by, our cultural, religious, particularly religious notions, a bit of cultural, recent cultural, or what we can call post-Renaissance cultural issues, and so on. So we have to really think about the LGBTQ community without bringing in religion. Look at the research that has been done in understanding who these people are, why they are who they are, and this is what I want to just explain shortly. Understanding the correct explanation for the origin of sexual orientation is really very critical in correcting the misconceptions and helping Kenyans and many other people around the world to overcome these negative impressions that you're seeing around that so often prevent us from acquiring respect and compassion for people who are simply different from us. Let me just repeat. These are people who are simply different from Bill Dindi, from me, because I'm not gay, I'm not lesbian, but these are people who are different from me. And we are seeing negative impressions. We are seeing misconceptions. Instead of respect and compassion, we are seeing a push by the religious community largely and by the homophobic leadership in this country. And then the majority of Kenyans who just don't understand who these people are, wanachukua mawe, wanataka kuwatupia. They want now to crucify the Supreme Court judges. They want to have gone public in support of the Supreme Court judgment. They want to stone me as well. So homosexuality is basically a variation of sexual attraction. That is it, Bill. And all the religious people who are on this platform who think that the Bible is the book that should define for us what is right and wrong. I don't take that position. Homosexuality or, sexuality or sexual variation is normal. It is expressed in a minority of the human population, my friends. This, variation of sexual attraction has a biological basis. Go and do some research. Stop saying homosexuals are not part and parcel of our community. It has a biological basis. It operates through the molecular mechanisms that control the anatomy and functioning of a developing brain. And in the recent years, a great deal has been discovered about this biology, right? So, there's a lot of evidence, my friends. There's a lot of evidence that leads to the conclusion that the explanation for homosexuality is biological. We went to school, brothers and sisters. It is biological. It is common for some people to associate this condition as a genetic condition. This is a genetic condition, but some people normally look at it like it's an illness, ni kama ugonjwa, that needs to be cured. I've seen politicians, we did a letter and I saw one of the MPs saying that the only two sexual orientations are male and female, that we are all heterosexual. We are not. The genes that result in same-sex attractions are not bad genes. It's just like if you get red hair color, or if you're left-handed. That's just as simple as it. You're not an abnormal human being. You're just a different human being. I want to delve into a bit of history at this juncture and say that in about the 15th or 16th century, there was a lot of oppression of homosexual relationships by the Roman Catholic Church. And we are seeing that happening today. Bill, you're part of these people who want to throw stones at this community and try to make religion to be the basis of morality. Yet we need to understand things from a purely biological, purely psychological perspective. And you see, before the Renaissance, before the 15th and 16th century, we had a lot of communities that actually had homosexuality within, within their communities. If you go to China, male homosexuality has been acknowledged in China since ancient times and was mentioned in many famous works of the Chinese literature. Yeah. If you go to Japan, records of men who have sex with men in Japan date back to ancient times. Friends, if you go to classical Japanese literature, men are frequently moved by the beauty of young boys. Go to ancient Egypt. Yeah. We have a lot of literature again showing that ancient Egyptians actually embraced this kind of, homosexuality and same-sex relationships. But when it came to about the 16th century, 15th, 16th century, the Catholic Church in Europe, they actually started passing laws that criminalized homosexuality. There was a death penalty in most European states. In France, for example, at that time, first offending, sodomites lost their testicles. Second offenders lost their penises. Third offenders were banned. This is by some of these European countries. Women caught in same-sex acts would be mutilated and executed. If you guys know St. Thomas Aquinas, who was also a philosopher, one of the philosophers that is relied upon by the religious community to advance some very outdated and weak arguments for the existence of God. St. Thomas Aquinas argued that sodomy was second only to murder in the ranking of sins. And you've seen Bill Dindi here saying that it is a sin. This is something God does not want. And if you look at our parliament, if you look at the religious community in Kenya, you're seeing the same trend. What St. Thomas Aquinas argued over how many years ago? I think that was in the 13th century, about 800 years ago, when he said that this was only, homosexuality was only second to murder, is what you're seeing people in the 21st century, when we now understand that this is a biological issue, and when we're now understanding that sexual orientation is normal. The church at that time used every means at its disposal to fight what it considered to be the corruption of sodomy. Men were fined, men were jailed, boys were flogged. Yes, yes.
3 minutes left.
All right. So today, I just want to finish by saying that today we have countries around the world that have normalized the fact that now it is okay to be homosexual, it's okay to be gay, it's okay to be lesbian, it's okay to be transgender, and so on. And I do think that in Kenya, it is so unfortunate that we still have a penal code that criminalizes homosexuality. I also think that the definition of family in our constitution was driven largely by the religious groups that were behind the drafting of this constitution. And I do think that the definition of family in our constitution should change, because that's a problem, that family can only be family where there's a man and a woman. When now we have an understanding of what sexual orientation is, that is a very limiting definition of what family is. And I want to just submit that although we are making progress, the religious community in Kenya is standing as usual, in the way of progress in terms of the human rights of this minority. The atheists in Kenya society, we also are representing a minority. It took us a court ruling, a court judgment for us to get our rights to be registered. Now the LGBT community, it has taken another court ruling against the religious groups. We fought with the religious groups. Now the LGBTQ have gotten a ruling and the religious groups are up in arms. The religious community in Kenya is a problem in terms of the progress we're supposed to make in terms of human rights. I will stand as Mumia with the LGBTQ community because I know these are human beings just like us, and we need to embrace them. We need to be inclusive, and we need to allow ourselves to understand who these people are instead of calling them sinners, instead of saying the Bible says this, you know, the Quran says this, you know, there's a natural order. No, human beings are complex. Sexual orientation is a complex issue. I would urge Bill, Dindi, and others to really try and understand, instead of bringing the Bible and saying it is a sin and so on and so forth. I rest my case at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Harrison. Thank you for, oh, let me bring my video on. Yeah, thank you for just your passionate opening statements. And I think this is going to be an interesting conversation. And one thing that we want to encourage in the African Debates channel is very passionate disagreement, but respectfully. And so now we are going to start the cross-examination period. And I think we will start with Harrison. So Harrison will start asking the questions. So Harrison now will ask questions to Bill with regards to his opening statement for 5 minutes, and Bill only answers. So I just want to start the timer whenever Harrison starts asking the questions. You can start any minute.
Okay, thank you very much, Charles. How much time do I have to ask the questions?
No, you just ask repeatedly, like one question at a time as it responds.
Okay. So Bill did I just have one, at least the first question for you. And I want to ask you, what is your biggest problem with this particular community being allowed to be registered as an NGO? What is the biggest issue? Because I don't think they are stealing from anybody. I don't think it's criminal for them to be registered as an NGO. I don't think they have come out to suggest that they want to form a criminal gang or they want to overturn the current government. This is just a basic right that they're being accorded by the courts. So I just want to understand what is this uproar against them being accorded these fundamental rights?
Okay, so first of all, Bwana Harrison, you have misrepresented certain facts. When you talked about Article 36, for example, of the Constitution, and this majority ruling by the courts, you talked about the statement by the bench, and that every person has a right to associate, right? The exact statement was, it will be unconstitutional to limit the right to associate through the denial of registration of an association purely on the basis of sexual orientation of the applicants. Now, you need to appreciate that Article 36 actually does not talk about sexual orientation, yeah? People are not to be denied the right to associate, and of the items listed there is sex, but there's no sexual orientation. That is why my first issue with it, even just looking at the merits of the argument without getting into the nitty-gritties of my disagreement with the movement, is the fact that what the judges did was essentially legislate from the bench. You know, they did not interpret.
Article 36. Read Article 36, please. You know, you can't. The Constitution is.
It's not sexual orientation. It's not sexual orientation.
No, Article 36, read it as a separate article. You know, Article 36 has nothing to do with sex. It says every person,
association, yes. On the basis of, and it's listed there, not.
No. Article 36 does not list, it's not a discrimination. Article 36 just says every person has the right to freedom of association, which includes the right to form, join, or participate in the activities of an association of any kind. Part 2 says a person shall not be compelled to join an association of any kind. There shall be a right to have a fair hearing before registration is cancelled. That's it. That's it. Read Article 36.
Okay, Harrison, what I'm saying, therefore, you also need to hear me out. What I'm saying is this: the framers of this constitution, and we were there, thankfully, it was a constitutional moment and all of us were there. The framers of this constitution clearly did not envisage a situation where sexual orientation would be one of those associations that need to enjoy this same right on account of the fact that already the penal code 162, 163, 165, this had been criminalized. So essentially what we are saying is, if we are to go with your argument, Harrison, then
1 minute left.
Can form their association, you know? Criminal groups can form their association. So no, if you're to go with the spirit and the letter of the law, I think it's extremely clear that the framers of this constitution, and by the way, you've even talked about them having been influenced by the religious right. So there was no way that they could have envisaged a situation where we would be discussing sexual orientation as a right. You know, association of people that, a group that has been criminalized, having the right to freely associate.
Harrison, do you have any question?
Yes, I have another question for Bill and Dindi, although what he's doing is basically just denying other human beings their rights or association, which is, I mean, even without the constitution, you should not do that, Bill. But let me ask.
This can be a human beings, right? And the constitution
has
right to associate.
You can let him ask and then you, because your question time is about to start.
Okay, let me ask my second question. So, Bill, do you believe that that there are only two kinds of sexual orientations, that it's only male and female? Or do you have an understanding of the various other sexual orientations, or for you, a human being can only be male or female? I'd like to hear that from you.
Harrison, I know where your question is going. Allow me to respond. Yes.
As you answer now, it's your question time. After you've responded, you can start asking questions.
Yeah.
I know your question is specifically targeted to whether homosexuality, therefore, on account No, allow me.
Just answer the question.
I am. And in fact, I'm responding with a study. This is a study that was conducted by Harvard University. And the lead researcher, Professor Benjamin Neal, is actually gay. He's a geneticist at Broad Institute of MIT. And between 2006 and 2010, they conducted extensive studies, research into the homosexual phenomena. It was reported in the journal Science, and you can find all this information online. They studied some 500,000 individuals. So this was probably, in fact, this has been the world's largest study into the homosexual phenomena. Listen to a statement he gives as part of his conclusion. It's effectively impossible to predict an individual's sexual behavior from their genome, from the genetic makeup. This is a geneticist. He's essentially saying it's impossible there's no such thing as a gay gene. And so your extensive arguments on genetics as the basis for homosexuality are clearly off. Therefore, on account of this research by a gay researcher and his team, what are our options in terms of the genders? I think itself responds. The question answers itself. Yeah.
Bill, you have 3 minutes left to ask your questions also.
Harrison, if you feel like you're a woman trapped in a man's body, what assures you that your mind is right and not your body, not your biology? What assures you, Bwana Harrison, and the extension of this same argument is what has advanced transracialism, where a Black person identifies as a white person, where transspeciesism, where a man identifies as a cat. Harrison, where will this stop?
Yeah, what you just need to understand is that there's something called sexual orientation, you know, and once you understand the concept of sexual orientation, then you really get to answer these questions easily. So sexual orientation really involves a person's feelings and sense of identity, you know, and this is not something that is noticeable to others. People may act or not act on the attractions they feel, And most scientists agree that sexual orientation is the result of a combination of, environmental, emotional, hormonal, biological factors. And, homosexuality and bisexuality aren't caused. You see, the thing is, Bill, what you're trying to ask here is a reflection of what Kenyans also are having to grapple with. They don't understand that there is a difference between somebody's sex, which is male and female based on the genitals, and somebody's sexual orientation, which is basically how a person feels about their sense of identity. And so just to tell you, I've said sexuality is complex, and we're just beginning to understand sexuality. I have personally been approached by male people who tell me I am beautiful and they love me, they like me. And that is how they feel about their sense of identity, their attraction to a person of the same gender. You cannot come and tell me that this is something we can ignore as being part of our humanity, So I think, Bill, to answer your question, is that sexual orientation isn't a choice that can't be changed. Some people who are homosexual or bisexual may hide their sexual orientation to avoid prejudice. So the thing is to understand that we have a spectrum of gender identity, a spectrum of sexual orientation that includes heterosexual, bisexual, homosexual, gay, lesbian, and I think just
we
to
have
throw
1
you,
minute left.
Yeah. So just to answer your question is, I think we just need to make people understand that you can feel differently about many things as a human being, including your sexual orientation.
And so essentially, if you feel like you are a crocodile trapped in a human body, then we should allow you to just express the same, and we use pronouns that you will deem fit. That's essentially what you're saying.
There are people who actually feel like lions, and I've also seen a lot of people who, express themselves in a manner you could actually tell they are very aggressive. By the way, Bill, there are people who are actually very aggressive in nature. You could actually almost argue that these are guys who seem to be behaving more like animals than humans. So I think let's also understand. Let's understand that it's not strange for people to actually behave like lions and be like lions and be boisterous and very, very bold like lions. That's not a very remote. It's not a very remote thing to think about.
That has nothing to do with sexuality and what you're talking about. You're escaping my question.
So time is up.
It's about how people, genetically and how those genetics, how people actually behave in relation to their genes, And then, there are some dominant genes. You've done this in school. So people have behaviors based on genes.
You with regard to sexuality that
the cross-examination period is over.
Okay.
And now we get into the rebuttals. So guys, as you can see, they are actually friends. They can laugh. They're not about to kill one another. And so that's what we're trying to encourage in this kind of format. So now the rebuttals will be started by Bill now. So Bill will have 10 minutes. So he's only rebutting Harrison's opening statement as well as the interaction during the cross-examination. So Bill, you have 10 minutes to do so.
All right. So I will start by just pointing out essentially the biological case against homosexuality, and clearly the largest research that was conducted by a leading researcher in this field cast aspersions on what is the common perspective, on what is commonly being advanced to us as supposed gospel truth. Yeah. Let's talk a bit about just the social cultural realities of the context that we inhabit. A lot has been said about love and care and the need for compassion and all that. And by the way, those are Christian values. And I will tell you, Bwana Harrison, with no fear of contradiction. There are lots of things that have been done by the church that are wrong, that I would stand up anytime and completely oppose. When you're talking about stoning of gays and all that, that's wrong. That's wrong. You know, when someone cut off the ear of a soldier who was coming to arrest Jesus, trying to save the savior, it's actually Jesus himself who returned that ear and told that this overzealous disciple that was wrong, you know? So are there certain times when Christians have overstepped, overzealously so? Absolutely. What does the Bible tell us about, I mentioned, you know, sin and all of us being sinners? What does the Bible say? It actually says all of us are sinners, and all of us, Harrison, means all of us, including myself. So when we stand at a pedestal and try to throw stones to those that we think are sinning differently than us, that is wrong. But when we point out a wrong that the Bible calls a wrong, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, okay? When men tried to stone that woman who was caught in adultery, for example, you remember, again, Jesus said, he who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. So our tone, I think, needs to be different. When we speak as we are, we do not want to stone the gays. We do not want to, we are basically just saying, no, this is wrong. This is wrong. And we are citing all these reasons why it's wrong. Yes, the Bible says it is wrong, but even outside of the Bible, we are saying biology itself. You, Harrison, have read and done the Form 2 basic lock and key hypothesis of our biological makeup. And you will agree with me that clearly this is not in keeping with what the natural design is. This is probably why you will also appreciate that there's lots of diseases, for example, that are associated with the choice to express sexuality in this manner. Think about it. I'm citing a report here from by Androm Palo on sexually transmitted causes of gastrointestinal symptoms in homosexual men. It was published in the medical clinics of North America. And he cites diseases that on account of the homosexuality specifically, makes them have a high predisposition to them. Anal cancer, for example. Practicing homosexuals, male homosexuals, have 10 times higher predisposition to this on account of this practice. Diseases like Giardia lamblia, you know, when AIDS began, by the way, in around 1978 there, you remember that in fact the original name for AIDS was GRID, you know, gay reproductive immunodeficiency syndrome, yeah, that. And it was because there was a very high predisposition for practicing homosexuals to contract this a lot higher than in heterosexuals, people who are practicing their sexuality, you know, the natural way. And so it feels as though we don't have time to talk about the human papilloma virus, for example, you know, and how our homosexual brothers have constantly suffered from this. The sphincter muscles at the back there, they're meant for exit, Bwana Harrison. It is basic biology. And every time you misuse, you use something in a manner that it was not designed for, abuse is inevitable. And no wonder we are ending up with these kinds of challenges. There's an African proverb, Bwana, 5 minutes? Okay. There's an African proverb, Bwana Harrison, that says, don't tear down a fence. You are a Muluya, Harrison, from your surname. You're a Muluya like I am. I'm from Western Kenya as well. There's a saying that you should not tear down a fence until you know why it was put up. That fence at the rear was put up for a very particular reason, frankly. And it is, I'm sure you will agree with me, so that when abuse, it is misused or used for the wrong reason, then inevitably you find these kinds of challenges with all these diseases and all that. Allow me to also mention a fact here, just a sec, on the issue of just the fact that, hey, here in Africa, frankly, the African culture, the African person, the structure and orientation of the African society is very centered around the family. We are very communal in nature, you know. The Western world is very individualistic, but for us, we are very communal, and that's just how, in essence, you know, we have chosen to structure our societies. Homosexuality essentially goes right against this particular grain, you know. Homosexual unions are sterile unions by definition, regardless of whatever they try to do. Unless they adopt, they are sterile unions, and therefore they act against this socio-cultural ethic that is actually good for human thriving, you know. And should we therefore go ahead and affirm this, we will end up where the West is today. And frankly, you know that one of the big issues with the West right now is their declining population, you know, standards and population, the demographics, you know. And while there are many factors that explain this, it does not help that sexuality that does not help human procreation and thriving in this manner is encouraged and espoused greatly and strongly supported by these particular cultures. So as a people, we are just saying, we are seeing where our brothers are going wrong. And frankly, we need not necessarily get there. It's said experience sometimes is for fools. It's important to learn from the experience of others and do what you need to do. I think it's Melinda Selims, who's a former lesbian, who states, a man may lie to himself very prettily, but he can never really escape from the knowledge that this is a lie. And for our homosexual brothers and sisters, I think there's overwhelming evidence that while you may want to pass this off as normal, frankly, it is not, okay? Homosexual attraction on the other side, on the other hand, is something entirely different. All of us might have certain attractions that are not necessarily okay or normal. And I'm sure you have some, I may have some, okay? But we need not respond to those. You know, one of the hallmarks of humanity is the suppression of certain urges that are wrong if we are to have a functional society. You know, it's what separates us from many in the animal, most of the animals, for example, in the animal kingdoms. We are animals, but one of the differences is this idea and this ability to suppress what
1
is
minute left.
Yeah, and basically encourage what would eventually flourish our culture and humanity in general. I would argue that homosexuality does not necessarily do that. In fact, the kind of confusion it has created, think about the Olympics, for example, today. I mean, we are having trans athletes who are competing against, like Laurel Hubbard, you know, New Zealand, weightlifter. He's a man identifying as a woman and going to beat every other woman. Even in entertainment, like the very basic, you know, realities of what brings us together and causes us to be entertained and all are being challenged by some of these virtues and values that are espoused by our homosexual friends. And so we want to argue that this is not in keeping with what is, you know, what is proper, and therefore it's important for us to have an honest conversation and truly reconsider our support for the movement.
All right, thanks a lot, Bill, for that rebuttal. And now we'll just go straight to Harrison. And just for everyone to note that immediately after Harrison's rebuttal, we will get into the Q&A, and I can see a lot of questions in the live stream as well as on Zoom. So just keep them coming, and then we are going to be answering those questions immediately after Harrison's 10-minute rebuttal starting now.
Let me begin by saying that Kenya is not a Christian nation. Can I repeat that? Kenya is not a Christian nation. Kenya is not a country governed by Christian moral values. Kenya is not a country governed by religious laws. Kenya is not a country governed by the Bible or the Quran. Kenya is a country governed by acts of parliament and the laws of Kenya and the constitution of Kenya. The church in Kenya does not hold cannot purport to be the one defining for Kenyans what is right and what is wrong. Kenya is a signatory to international conventions of human rights. And we have to see ourselves as Kenyans as part of a changing world that is becoming more inclusive and more tolerant to those who are different from us. This is not even a Christian, what I'm talking about, it's not a Christian value. Inclusivity is a right. It's a progressive way of looking at human beings. It's nothing to do with religion. So, you know, Bill, when you throw around this idea of Jesus returned an ear to the head of a person, Jesus is also not for me, you know, I'm the president of the Atheists in Kenya Society. You have to understand that Jesus is not the standard for moral values, you know, in my world and the world of very, very many other secular and humanistic people in the world. Because, Bill, I think the problem I'm seeing with your argument, it is so Christian-centric. And when you make your argument to be Christian-centric, you're going to make very narrow arguments, and you're going to limit your thinking, and you're going to end up with the things you're doing right now, discriminating against a group of people, really, that has not stolen from you, has not taken your wife, hasn't taken your property, it has not taken your cows, it's not taken your goats. This is just a group of people that are different, period. And so I just want to start by giving that kind of context, that anybody who is presenting an argument on the basis that no, the church, the Bible, religion is losing it. If you look at our constitution, and and I want to give you an example. If you're a country of religious people or who take values from religion, why is it that the Atheists in Kenya Society has been registered legally in Kenya and nobody can go to court and challenge that? By the way, we are actually in court because somebody else has again taken us to court, but he's gonna lose that case. We are appearing in court this month. Somebody wants us to be suspended on the basis of our existence is unconstitutional, our registration. But you see, I can tell you, Bill, and the rest of the religious community, we are not just a country, we are part of a global movement, and we're part of a global world. We're just part of the world. And the direction the world is taking today is something called internationally accepted human rights, one of which is that we need to respect people who are different from us. That's very fundamental. I just want to also mention that we have a penal code regime in Kenya that is very outdated. It was based, you see, the penal code bill you're talking about, which is of course the penal code of our country that criminalizes homosexuality. That's one of the laws that was brought about. It's a very archaic law. It's based on very, very archaic British laws. Those were the times when Britain actually also had criminalized homosexuality. Now, Britain has moved on. And now they have changed their laws to accommodate the LGBTQ community. And the law they brought to us, which is now in the penal code criminalizing homosexuality, dating back to when in the 1960s and so on, is the law that we still have in our penal code regime. Just like they brought us the Bible, these missionaries, they brought us the Bible, they brought us Christianity. If you go back to Britain, about half of their population no longer go to church. They identify as secularists, they identify as atheists, they identify as agnostics. Kenya, we are still believing that, the Bible, God, and so on, these are the things that are supposed to form our moral codes and moral values. So I want to say this, the world is changing, and I want to speak directly to the religious groups who are opposing the inclusivity, the rights of the LGBT community. I want to tell them, the world is changing. The world is changing. Long time ago, in the 17th, 16th century, you could be killed because you were gay and lesbian and homosexual. You could be killed. Today, many countries are accommodating these people. And I want to plead with those who are basing their arguments to discriminate against the LGBTQ to understand that we have to conform to the changing world. There is nothing like right and wrong, a binary approach to morality that, because God does not want this, therefore this is how it should be. You have to understand, not everybody believes in God. I personally live a very moral life. I mean, I try my best. I don't get arrested for doing bad things. It does not mean I'm a Christian. It just means I appreciate the next human being. I don't want them to be hurt by my actions. And that is what is important in Kenya and in the world today, that we are not basing our morality, we are not basing right and wrong on a book, on a belief system. We are basing it on the fact that we are human beings. Bill, I look at you as a human being first. I don't care whether you're a Christian or not. And if you were gay, Bill, I would not say that you have no right of association. Because I have no book. You're just a human being different from me. And this is really the crux of the matter, that even without the Supreme Court ruling, my religious friends, I was religious once. I'm also speaking from a pre-Christian. I was a Christian before I became an atheist. So I know what I'm talking about here. So let me finish by saying this, that I just want to urge Kenyans to have, and the good thing is we are living in the knowledge age. Kusema ati haujui, you cannot say you don't know. Do your research. There's a lot of research that has been done around this community. I want you to understand them. Most importantly, I want us as Kenyans to accommodate them as part and parcel of our community without making moral judgments based on narrow philosophies and religious approach to morality, where we are saying they are sinners, it is a sin. That we are past that as a country. Look, we are past calling people sinners. Bill, am I a sinner because I'm an atheist? It would be ridiculous if anybody said that. I have a human mind which can be able to make me make my own choices about what I believe. And that humanity is what I'm pushing for here. And I want us to accommodate the LGBTQ community. I want us to have Jesus Christ, although I'm an atheist, let me just talk about Jesus here. Jesus actually did not have a problem with the prostitutes. I would expect us not to have a problem with the LGBTQ community. Thank you very much. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, Harrison, for that passionate rebuttal. And yeah, so you can see,
Charles. He left a minute. Maybe I could quickly throw in something there.
You can throw it in the Q&A because the questions are too many. Yeah?
Okay.
So in fact, I don't even know how we'll deal with it. And so we are actually getting into the Q&A. And I want to see how we'll do this. I don't want us to go too long. I was hoping the Q&A. So I think what we will do is that I know you will want to give very passionate responses to some of these questions, but you will have to do a maximum of 1 minute response. And then maybe the person who has been asked a question responds, and then maybe the other debater can comment for like 15 seconds. I hope you guys can do that so that we can get in as many questions as possible. Unfortunately, most of the questions are for Harrison. So we will see how we will do this. And then also in Zoom, there are those who wanted to ask verbal questions. I'm just hoping that we will behave ourselves for those in the Zoom section who wanted to ask questions, but we will get to them later. Let's just go straight to the questions. So I will start with a question for Bill. So like there was someone in the live stream who was saying that okay, if you're in the Zoom, please mute yourself. Okay, so there's someone in the live stream who was asking that they have no problem supporting the LGBTQIA community, even in the realm of natural law, because there was someone who was saying that natural law should make us not support them. And I think that was part of the argument from Bill. But there's someone who's saying supporting has no problem. But there are some anomalies where we won't support something. So I don't know if you can comment on that. Just a quick comment.
Well, I think really he has stated it, you know, and this is also in response to something that Harrison said. We are a democracy, I agree. We are not a theocracy. We are not ruled by God. I agree with you. Kenya is not a Christian state. It's clear we are a secular state. And on account of that, democracy demands that the majority have their way, you know, really, even as the minority might have their say, but the majority have their way. And essentially, we are saying, we know what the majority opinion on this matter here in Kenya is. I mean, it takes no rocket scientist to actually determine that. So on account of our structure as a society, on account of, yes, those natural laws that you've cited and all, it's pretty clear that this is not in keeping with what is consistently, with what is considered natural. Yeah.
All right, thanks. Harrison, would you like to make just a quick comment, maybe 15-second comment? Harrison?
Yeah, let me just make a quick one and say this. Mark Twain, there's a person who was called Mark Twain who said, whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it is time to pause and reflect. Thank you.
All right, now a question for you, Harrison. Someone is asking, if atheism is true, supporting natural law, which leans towards survival and continuity of life, how can it support such an agenda?
Yeah, you know, I think we have an obsession with the continuity of life. You know, you have to understand that, this idea that we have to keep procreating and therefore we need male and female. We are products of evolution, and this happened by chance. Ideally, humans were not, ideally we were not supposed to exist. Our existence is pure chance. There was a time, if you go back to the history of evolution, there was a time, I think 300,000 years ago, human beings were only 100,000 in a small part of the world. It is almost a miracle how we multiplied to get to the 7 billion we are today. So let's not be so obsessed with the idea that we need to continue procreating. I'm not of that. The purpose of life is not procreation. You know, we have to also accept that human beings can come together to just live together without the need to procreate. Human beings can live together just as friends, as human beings who respect each other. And we are seeing this even in heterosexual couples. It's not everybody who is married who wants to get children. So I think this obsession with the fact, now how are we going to procreate if we allow gays and lesbians? That's an issue. If you want to procreate, you yourself, you procreate. If I don't want to procreate, leave me alone. If you think procreation is the purpose of life, it's not. If you think that human beings have always existed, we haven't. Cockroaches have existed for a longer time, much longer time than human beings. So I think, again, let's not be obsessed with this idea that we have to have sex and procreate. I think these are Christian preoccupation that we need to really get rid of. It's a religious preoccupation, that we need to get done with.
Okay, I think Bill, you can comment on that quickly if you want to, but very short comment, and then I get to a question for you.
I think you can just proceed with the question for me. There's nothing to add on that.
All right. So there's someone who is saying, I do think it is interesting that you bring up churches pointing out wrongs when the church has been quiet about other big issues like pedophilia and domestic violence, which are bigger issues in Kenya. This makes it seem like the church is targeting a particular group. Can you comment on that?
Now, I have already stated very explicitly that the church has erred. We have gone wrong on many, many, many counts, you know. And that you can go back in history, you can go back in time. We have taken some wrong steps. There are some causes we have supported more passionately than others that probably we should not have. There are certain political leaders, for example, that we have lend our support to at the expense of others that I think is wrong, you know. But that said, I think it's just in keeping with what is consistently the biblical view, which basically states that, Harrison, you and I, there's no difference. There's no difference. You're a sinner, I am a sinner, you know, in the eyes of an all-seeing God who is the standard. And by the way, I think we should also address this issue of morality and the source for morality. And Harrison, we were to have that debate some time back. It failed to come through. So maybe Wandalo challenge to you. What is the source of morality, you know? Because frankly, in fact, I would quote from Richard Dawkins, whom I'm sure Harrison here upholds as a, you know, mere deity. In his A Devil's Chaplain, for example, he actually says, it's pretty hard to defend absolute morals on anything other than religious grounds. Sam Harris, in The Moral Landscape, surprisingly, because he's held a contrary opinion, actually argues again. He says, in essence, science can't form a base for morality. Basis of morality cannot move from the naturalistic view to ethics and morality. And I could argue from David Hume and others who are naturalistic philosophers, atheists, who actually really have inadvertently upheld the same view. So all we are saying is, while the church has failed to speak up on certain issues, that is wrong. We should call out the church. And frankly, it is not all of us who have been silent about these issues. While some in the church have been quiet, some of us have actually consistently made noise about these issues because they are equally wrong. And in the eyes of God, it is wrong. All those things you've cited up for chat, it's true, and they're wrong, and we should call them out as well.
All right, thanks for that. I guess for now, I won't allow the opponent to comment so as to cover as many questions as possible. So I have a question for Harrison. And I think maybe this is for both because I didn't even understand the question. The question goes like this. Why can't the luteinizing hormone in homosexuals be low if they are oriented sexually to be so? Anyone knows anything about that? I personally didn't fully understand that question. If no one understands it, you can just move on.
No, I don't understand that question.
Oh, I think something happened to Bill and he stepped out. Oh, hi, Bill. Oh, you're back, huh?
Yes, I am.
Oh, yeah. So, like, there was this question.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know anything about
I had the question.
do you know anything?
I had the question. I also do not. I do not have all the information on the matter, but all I would say is essentially on the study of genetics and all that, it has been established. This is beyond doubt. Lots of money has been poured into research to find the elusive gay gene, but none has been discovered.
No. Now that Bill is saying that, let me just say this.
Harrison, you can comment on your final statements, because we have too many questions.
Okay.
Trying to see how I can get them. Okay, so there's this question for Bill. We can't deny people inherent rights because we see them as different or because they identify as different. Even the worst criminals have their rights protected in law. Maybe you can just make a quick comment. I think we've talked about that a lot.
Yes, we have, and we need not belabor it. So I think I'll just rest my case on that one. I've already stated my position. Okay,
let's get to, so this is a bit of a long question, but I hope Harrison will be able to just give a succinct, quick response. the question goes like this. The problem we have with the LGBTQ isn't necessarily about their rights as human beings, but the manner in which it's being handled. It's like it's being promoted as the best thing since sliced bread. We oppose it because of the potential negative influence it comes with. Look at the way the LGBTQ people live. With these tough economic times, our young people deliberately fall into this trap, not because they naturally belong to the rare minority, but in pursuit of easy LGBTQ people. I think maybe what they meant is there are some benefits that some LGBTQIA some in the community get, I think financially. So there's some people who want to go that route. And I know that can be a subject of a whole hour, but Harrison, just 1 minute response.
Yeah. Just so, what is the question again? Sorry for that.
So the issue is that it's made to look like this is the best thing that has ever happened to humanity. Celebration of LGBTQIA.
No, I get it. No, I get it. So I think why there's a lot of passion around this issue is because we are seeing a lot of historically, this is one issue that has never come to the surface the way it has in Kenya. We've always normalized the criminality of gays and lesbians. That has been the normal thing. Even my mom has a problem with that. So why it is a big issue is that for some of us, we really think that the time has come for us to have an attitude change towards this community. To have their way. This time round, the majority are denying these minority rights. And that is why we have this. And then our constitution and our laws in support of inclusivity, common sense is in support of tolerance. Yeah, please. Sorry about that. Am I back?
Oh yeah, there was a bit of some internet.
In short, what I'm saying is that we are at a moment where some of the archaic ways of looking at morality is coming under scrutiny. We are at a time when morality is being challenged. The very core of what is morality, the very core of what is human rights is becoming a subject. This is what we are. So this is not just about LGBT. Really, why this is a big issue is at the core of this is the whole definition of what is right, what is wrong, what is acceptable. So we have two sides pulling. On one side, we have the conservative religious groups and the conservative majority and the ignorant majority. And I'm not saying ignorant in a bad sense, ignorant in the sense that people have just not understood what is going on here. And then we have those who believe that the time has come for us to expand our understanding of some of these things and accommodate this group. So why it is a big issue is because it is touching on the very core of what morality is and how we understand it as a society, given our history and given our religious backgrounds and all these things. So it's a very touchy issue because it is the core of what we have believed that is being debated, the core of whether it is right or wrong. And you know, issues of right and wrong are very sensitive because you have on one side the conservatives and the liberals. So we are the liberals. And in fact, we are the progressives. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, because we have now 5 minutes left for Q&A, and there's this question for Bill. In fact, it's a follow-up to a question you answered, and this is how it goes. I think my problem with Christianity is that it has placed itself as this sort of fundamental truth, which is not true for everyone. I think that the church has been overstepping its bounds by expecting everyone to uphold its standard, expecting everyone to uphold its standard. If you can comment on that.
Yeah, Charles, I'll comment on that. And there's something else that someone mentioned in the chat there that I'll quickly also attach to this. So first of all, the fact that the church has been obsessing, as the person asking is framing it, obsessing over this idea of truth, a truth that is true for everyone else. The whole idea of objective versus subjective truth. Is there such a thing as a truth that is objectively true? And I would assert that indeed there is. It makes rational sense. It makes it's in keeping with even basic laws of philosophy and grammar. Subjectivity of truth would imply that even two varying opinions could be true at the same time, even if the two opinions are saying each is wrong. Like there's so many problems that would arise with this whole concept of subjectivity of truth. So the church has been asserting that there is an objective truth. And since our worldview emanates from an appreciation that there's a God who created the world as we know it, then he becomes the objective transcendent standard for defining what truth is. Because again, different times in history, historical epochs and all, require that if there is an objective standard, it has to be outside of our experience. And we argue that that is God. No wonder we've been upholding some of these standards and insisting on them. But allow me to also just quickly comment on something someone said I saw on the chat around homosexuality. Essentially, these people are not hurting anyone. Why would we? What issue do we essentially have with it? And all we are saying is this, and that was part of my opening statement. It is not just about homosexual sex. This matter is a lot bigger. It's a question of, it goes right down to the determination of who a human is and what constitutes humanity. Harrison has insinuated on this conservative view of sex, marriage, and kids being conjoined. It is true. That is the conservative view. From where we stand and what we believe, that was the view, and it's been upheld by many cultures for a long time. But with the sexual revolution and postmodernism and all, there's been a split of that. So now we are having a situation where marriage without babies has been normalized. And of course, there are certain cases where couples would desire kids but not get them. I'm not talking about those, but just a culture intentionally celebrating and upholding unions that are sterile. So marriage without babies, and he talked about it, just for fun, friendship and being together, can be argued. But it's moving even further to a place where now the idea of babies and sex is also getting separated, right? So that we have ideas like surrogacy, designer babies and all that. And when you begin to get into some of these spaces, there's lots of ethical issues that begin to surface. Ethical issues that frankly, we are not yet ready to address as a culture. We are not yet ready to face it. So we are having a tunnel, we are having a bigger vision of this whole thing. Our mindset, there's a meta reality to which some of these small, seemingly unimportant steps are actually leading towards. All other animals, that have gone extinct, for example, on this planet, have suffered from attacks from meteorites from outer space. But what we are saying is, on account of our choices and decisions, our erotomania and all, as humans, we are actually quickly rendering ourselves obsolete. We are healing into oblivion and extinction on account of our choices, all right?
And to get to the last question now.
On human flourishing, we would rather that not be taken. Hence our concern about some of these values. My apologies for it.
Okay, so now the last question, and if Harrison, you can just be quick on it. The last question, and then you get into the final statements. The question is this: only a theistic view considers humans as equal, not atheism. After all, why respect everyone if at all atheism is true? Remember, on atheism, morality is relative. There is no good, no justice, and no evil. Comment on that, and then after you've commented, we finish with the Q&A.
Yeah, I think there's this notion which I just want to correct. There's nothing like objective moral values. This is an argument we've had over and over again. I'm seeing it cropping up. Me, I'm an atheist. All I am is that I don't believe in the existence of somebody called God, a deity, and that's it. In terms of moral values, I don't think morality has anything to do with God. Human beings are moral because they had to be moral. Morality was invented by social groups within the human history. And largely this was because of survival. This is what you need to understand. So morality has nothing to do with religion or God. It's just a moral, it's a construct that emanates from our social nature as human beings and the need to survive. I think that's all I'll say about that.
All right, guys, thanks a lot for the exciting Q&A. Sorry for those questions that we haven't addressed. It's not because I didn't like anyone, but I was just trying to pick as many as possible so that everyone has a question. Now we are just going straight to the final statements, and we will start with Harrison, and he'll do a 5-minute final statement followed by Bill, and then we shall end the session. So Harrison, you can start your final statement whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so I just want first to say that I want to thank the African debates, the team that has organized this debate. It's a very important discussion and engagement and discourse, not just for this country, but for the African continent, which is still largely lagging behind in terms of understanding this minority community called LGBTQ. The African continent is also one of the, in fact, it's the most religious continent on the planet. And therefore, I just want to say this is a very, very important debate. And I want to thank the organizers for according Kenyans this opportunity. Secondly, I'll say that the Supreme Court of Kenya has made a judgment in the right direction. It is not about gender and sexual orientation. It's about human rights. Our constitution under Article 36 is very, very clear. I want everybody to go back to the Constitution of Kenya and read Article 36, which is what the Supreme Court relied on. The third thing I want to say is that Kenya is not a Christian country. You'll see religious groups coming on TV saying, you know, God does not want this. That's nonsense. Kenya is a country of atheists, Christians, Muslims, LGBTQ. It's a country of agnostics. It's a country of the nuns, people who don't believe in anything. They just want to live. And so we are seeing a push. And you know, the religious groups are the loudest on such matters. I also now want to just say that the question of what is right and wrong cannot be decided by the religious groups. Any religious leader who purports to be speaking on behalf of Kenyans on this issue of LGBTQ, I want to tell them, you're not speaking for me. I have my own mind in terms of understanding this minority group. The religious leaders who are coming and purporting to speak on behalf of the whole country, that you know what, this is what the Bible says, this is sin, this is what you're not speaking for me. And I'm urging Kenyans to have a mind of their own. We have the internet. Go do some research about this group, the LGBTQ. Read about them. Instead of throwing stones at them, instead of hating them, be like the biblical Jesus. At least I like Jesus for one thing. He never, you know, he embraced the prostitutes. And therefore, I think Kenyans have to have that kind of approach to LGBTQ. These are just people who are different from us. That is it. I would like to urge my Christian and Muslim brothers that you are not the ones that we are looking up to in terms of our moral values. Our constitution, especially our Bill of Rights, has given atheists rights, Christians rights, Muslims rights, Buddhist rights, and every other Kenyan has a right under the Bill of Rights. You cannot purport to be speaking on our behalf. And finally, let me just say that, how many minutes do I have? How many? How many more minutes? Please?
You have 1 minute left.
Yeah. So I just want to say that historically, we've seen a persecution. I feel bad that we are persecuting minorities. All the time, issues of such a nature come up in Kenya. Even when the atheists in Kenya society was being registered, do you know who made the most noise? Bill Dindi. It was the religious groups who did not want us to be registered. So I just want to say this. I think the religious groups should just step back and reflect on what they are doing to this country by denying minorities their rights. I rest my case.
About that, okay, guys, thanks, Harrison, for that passionate final statement. And at least we know that he likes Jesus in some areas. And now, Bill, I think Bill will now finish off with the 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Starting now.
Thank you very much. And I join my brother and very good friend, Harrison, to appreciate you, Charles and team, for putting this together. I think it's important for us to have conversations of this kind. And thank you for taking the bold step to put this up there. This could go, there are many ways this could have gone. And thank you for great moderating and all. I think you did a fantastic job. We need to do more of this. Clearly, there's an issue around morality and the source of morality. This is a philosophical debate that I think we need to have because many of our responses seemed to go back to that point, and our worldviews are very different. I think we should challenge each other on that one. I want to say I'm a father. I have 3 kids. And one of my biggest concerns with this whole homosexual story that we have discussed is frankly an near obsession with children that this movement has in terms of wanting to condition the kids to think a certain way and all that. And I have quite a bit of problems with that. 1st July 2021, the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorale, the largest in the world, put out this song, you can find it on YouTube, called "We Are Coming for Your Children." And they actually go ahead and talk about how they're coming for kids, to indoctrinate the kids and all. And sometimes when they adopt the kids, there have been many recorded cases of abuse against children that are conducted by this, some members of this community. You know, I'm referring here to, again, Harvard University Press publication by Sarah McClanahan and Gary Sandafer. It's titled Growing Up with a Single Parent, What Hurts and What Helps. Again, go look at the statistics, you know. Human flourishing and the well-being of children, it's actually a documented, researched, empirical fact that it takes a loving parent of opposite gender, just because of the differences that a man brings into the picture, a woman brings into the picture, it actually helps with the overall upbringing of a child. Check out the American Sociological Review as well, a report titled, "Does the Sexual Orientation of Parents Matter?" And again, these are secular publications, empirical research that suggests if kids are to be brought up well, then a family unit as conservatively envisaged, a man and a woman loving and in a monogamous union actually serves the interests of the kids best. Secondly, unfortunately, my friend Harrison has conveniently sidestepped the issue of that I raised on the medical issues associated with the homosexual practice. I listed them here. I quoted from journals and all. He did not say a single word on that one. Maybe because he could not really, he didn't have much to say on it, and I understand, you know. My argument again, we really are imploring the people to go to where the evidence lies, and you will notice that there truly is something off about this, and it's actually having an effect. And it's not just physical conditions, by the way, even mental conditions. There's a report that suggests in terms of mental health and all, homosexuals from Scandinavian countries, Finland, Denmark, I think, and Sweden, some of those North European countries, a report that actually suggests the largest cause of some of these mental stresses and all, there seems to be an inordinate issue with those who are practicing homosexuals. So could there be something about the condition that, because it's going against what should be the established order, is affecting our people? These are our brothers and sisters who are identifying as such, and we frankly care. That's why we are having this conversation. But lastly, Harrison again did not respond to the question. So where will this stop? Because it starts with man identifying as woman and vice versa, and then it moves into full-blown transgenderism. We do not have much of that problem yet here. But frankly, if you look at it, that is where we are headed. I'm saying there is a problem there. There is a problem there. We could identify as anything, you know, and where would that leave society? So I submit to us that this is an issue that needs further discussion, but the case against homosexuality, I think, is valid, it's consistent, it's coherent, it's rational, and it warrants some very sober appreciation by all of us. Thank you very much, and I wish you well.
Wow, guys, and with that, we have the end of the debate, and I want to thank Harrison and Bill for being able to show up and just discuss this issue, because I think it's important. And I guess the whole idea was that, as at least for me, I feel like Africans need to tell their own story. We need to be able to tell the world what we are thinking about ourselves and the things around us. And so, like, I'm hoping that's what this channel can do. In fact, as for those who are in the live stream on YouTube, on the African Debates channel, you should like and subscribe and share so that we can be able to get the conversation going. And also, something I wanted to do is I wanted to share something here. So for those who don't even know who these people are, I just want to share. So this is Harrison, and this is one of his websites, the Atheists in Kenya Society. So if you want to know more about what he's doing, you can go there. And also, me and Bill, we are part of a group called Apologetics Kenya. And so we're pretty much Christians who want to talk about a lot about like how the Christian faith actually speaks about every issue in life, even the ones you might not think it speaks about. And so we have certificate programs for training. And so the logo is about equipping believers and engaging skeptics. And yeah, and so like, yeah, we have that website. You can just go look it up. And yeah, there's a lot going on. And so that's just for those who want to, you know, dig in a bit deeper and get to know more about the people who are involved in these debates. So we've had past debates on colonialism, on the issues to do with science, on issues to do with whether Africans should abandon Christianity for atheism. So you can go to our YouTube page for that. And yeah, I think that's all. Be looking forward to other debates in the future, if God wills. I guess believing that God exists. And so like, I think that's all I have to share. And I think we can log out unless Harrison wanted to say something, because time is so
just
much.
one more thing. Allow me 1 second to just say that I'm actually at the Atheists in Kenya offices. We have an office in Nairobi, just after Jivanji Gardens. I'm inviting Bill, Charles, anybody else who wants to have a cup of tea or coffee or some biscuits, and anybody in the audience who wants to just interact with me, please feel free to pass by and we can engage on a more personal level. So thank you very much.
And I guess I'll have to leave. Bill, maybe you also want to say something before now we officially close? Or...
Yeah, I currently teach at the International Leadership University. It's in Hurlingham. We have lots of courses in the area of leadership, counseling, psychology, and theology. So any of you who may want to explore our programs are welcome. I'm mostly found there. I'm also involved with the River of God Church in Parklands with the young people there. So you're welcome to church. And like Harrison said, hata sisi tunawakaribisha kwa chai. Yeah, come, let's further conversations on this and many other matters that you may find pertinent. Thank you very much.
Nice. So at least we have a church recommendation there. And I think we can end. So we can just log out at our own discretion. And I think we will close the live stream. I hope Kevin is still around to end the live stream. I'm not sure, but we can log out now because the session is over. Just a second, let me just work on that. Basic. Yeah, but as I work on this, can see you guys later. Oh yeah. Yeah, so we can all log out. Yeah. And we
Yes, Charles, let me stop the live stream.
okay.
Okay, I think we can now end the session, right?